My name is Suzan Mirembe. I am a Ugandan lawyer, feminist, activist, sports person, a lot of things. I currently work as a sexual rights network coordinator at the Initiative for Strategic Litigation in Africa, ISLA, a South African-based organization. I also serve as a board chair at the Kuchu Times Media Group. For the next 3 years, I'll be here as a board chair. It's a newly formed organization, a new initiative, so we're hoping that we can get a lot of work done there. And I'm also a co-founder with a local LGBT organization called the Tala Foundation, which is working to support wellness and education for LGBTQ plus people in Uganda. Yeah, that's what I do.
Okay. I've heard about the Tara Foundation. Can you explain to me a bit more about the Tara initiative? What you envisage? What is your long-term goal? What prompted you to come up with the Tara Foundation?
The Tara Foundation is really a long-term dream of mine.
Okay.
Where a lot of my activist friends and myself have always talked about what we need to do to really serve the community, other than we can organize, but how do we serve our community? And we know that there are things that haven't been done. There's a lot of focus on health, and in particular MSM health, so we've struggled a lot to see what does the community care about, and what can we do to respond to the issues. And we found that some of the issues that people still deal with are being evicted from home. When your parents find out that you're queer, you're kicked out of your house. You lose your social support. We find that a lot of people drop out of school because of that. People get into sex work. People end up migrating to other places in order to find work. And then also mental health is a big issue. People struggle a lot with drug abuse, mental health issues, depression, lots of different mental health challenges. And we just wanted to find a way to address these things. So we came up with the Tala Foundation as a homegrown initiative to support education and wellness. We provide scholarships for queer people, we're calling it queer people, okay, LGBT people in Uganda, to study and pursue courses here. So it can be a degree course, it can be a diploma course, it can be a vocational training program. But we want to start forming scholarships so that people can go back to school and actually be able to better themselves as people, but also to contribute more meaningfully to the community. And then also to support wellness for the community. We have a wellness clinic which has therapists now who will be able to provide one-on-one counseling, group sessions, really focusing on mental health in particular, but also broadly wellness. What does wellness mean? There's spiritual wellness, financial wellness, there's spiritual, physical, emotional. So how do we support the whole breadth of what being a whole human being is? So we hope that we'll also be able to create partnerships with religious institutions to support Christianity, to support spirituality for LGBT people. We hope that we'll be able to form partnerships with other organizations that do alternative forms of healing, so yoga, fitness. Fitness is also a big part of what we are doing. So we also have a sports program there, which is providing support for the sports teams that exist. We think there are lots of talented LGBT people who play on the national team, for instance. They play in other local clubs here and there. But as a queer community, we're not nurturing that talent. So how can we come together to nurture that talent, to start organizing like that, bring together lots of people who can fundraise for the teams. We're currently working with the Uganda Kuchu Aquatics team to support them to go to the Paris Games, the Gay Games in 2018 next year. We are forming a basketball team. So working through sports as a way to showcase LGBT talent, to showcase the talent and the culture in Uganda. Yeah, that's what we do.
Good. Yeah, that's a very good initiative, because we see there's a lot of professionalism in the Kuchu community in Uganda, yes. And I think you're here to fill that gap, So thank you and hope you're the best. So tell us about your journey as a civil rights activist and a lawyer, and for the sexual minorities and other marginalized groups in Uganda.
Well, I have been an activist for I think a long time. I think at least my heart has been an activist heart for a long time. Mm-hmm. But I think sometimes, like our sexuality, you have to come out to yourself as an activist and accept that you're the person who wants to not just sit on the sidelines and observe what's happening, but you also want to be able to respond and do things that respond to the issues that go on around us. So I identify as an activist for so many reasons. Primarily, I work with the LGBT community because I think that our community is marginalized and left on the sidelines. That also that the best way to respond is for us to do the work ourselves, that we can't just keep saying we want our rights or we want this or want that without actually contributing to making sure those things happen. So my journey started, I think, a long time ago, perhaps in high school. It started then because it's when I realized that there were lots of injustices, and in particular for same-sex loving individuals and people who were outside of the binary. And so I thought, I never want this injustice to continue unaddressed. And so I chose to go to law school because of that. And when I joined law school, I always thought, okay, this is a good way to address the challenges that the LGBT community faces. Let's go to court, let's sue. But over time, when you meet people, you meet more activists, you make community, you start to realize that the issues we are faced with are so many, but also they are interlinked with the general issues that everyone else faces. So issues like access to justice, which is what I work on at the Initiative for Strategic Litigation in Africa, but also part of where my activism in Uganda has been, where a lot of LGBT people, for instance, in particular in Uganda, struggle to access justice, finding a lawyer, being able to go to court, or when violations happen that we just sit down and keep quiet with them. How about we respond to them? So access to justice is one issue. But also, if you look at the wider context in Uganda, you also see that there are situations where people are, for instance, detained for more than 48 hours and nobody says anything about things like that and nobody criticizes them. So I see my activist as speaking to all those things and wanting to respond to the various issues that affect not just our community but the country broadly.
Okay. Jine, my major concern today is about what happened a few weeks back. Last week, but one.
Yes.
The Tandon Incident, and I really want you to tell us more about the incident. Maybe people we are here making noise, free Suzan and everything, but maybe we didn't know much, and maybe as the person who faced this want more. How did all this begin? What happened?
Well, this is interesting. First, I just want to start by saying thank you so much to everybody who came out and made noise. It helped a lot for people to show the solidarity that they did, the people who emailed quietly or sent messages quietly, the people who moved whatever pieces they could move. Our team, myself in particular, I'm very, very grateful that people were able to respond, overwhelmed by the love and support. But also my whole team, I think, appreciates that general love, right? So what happened was that, as I already mentioned, I'm a lawyer, right? So the organization that I work with works on two broad areas, right? Women's rights or women's human rights and sexual rights. And how we see the work that we do, especially around the sexual rights program, because I coordinate that network. It's a program that works with social movements, primarily social movements, to try and get access to justice by connecting them with lawyers, basically, right? Through access to legal representation. A lot of the groups that we work with struggle a lot in terms of finding lawyers who can represent their causes. And when they do find lawyers, sometimes the lawyers don't necessarily understand what sexual rights are broadly or whatever it is. And so what we usually do is capacity strengthening with lawyers to equip them with the skills that they need or the knowledge that they need in order to be able to represent the clients that they do. So we are a support group basically for the lawyers, and that's the network. For the past 2 years, we've been working in Tanzania with the community there. By community, I mean the social movement, right? There's a whole range of different organizations that we work with who would like to basically form some sort of movement around accountability and creating support and access to justice, access to legal representation. A human rights movement, basically, is what we've been working towards. And so for the past 1 year, since January or February this year, the movement there, the community felt that they were able now to see themselves as a human rights movement, but more importantly, not just a human rights movement that's dormant, but a human rights movement that responds to issues. And one of the issues that the community thought was important to respond to was the ban on lubricants. So in 2016, the government of Tanzania banned importation and distribution of lubricants, claiming, of course, that these lubricants promote homosexuality or cause homosexuality and promote it in some way. And later they also closed drop-in centers, which are, and both these services were basically, initially, of course, a government response. So the government of Tanzania prior to 2016 had acknowledged that there's a health crisis in Tanzania, or a health issue in Tanzania that needs to be addressed through provision of basic services. And also a recognition that there are certain groups in society, what is called key populations, that are not able to access those services in mainstream service providers. So the government did have a policy in place, or at least a provision and understanding, which provided those services. Last year, they suddenly decided, without any evidence or any kind of background information, to say that lubricants promote homosexuality and these services were closed down. So the meeting that I was attending on October 17th, which was a couple of weeks ago, was a meeting to address, was basically a case consultation, a legal consultation between lawyers and their clients, right? To identify who the clients would be, who the lawyers would be, what the legal issues would be, the legal forum. So really a client consultation. And if you had to imagine it in another field, try to imagine it with a therapist sitting with their patient in a closed room, that kind of private setting, or imagine it as a doctor sitting with their patient in a private room to consult. None of those things is a criminal offense. It's the same thing with being a lawyer. When you consult with your client, it's not a case. It's not illegal. And so on 17th, when we were having this, it was the first day of the meeting. The meeting was raided by members of the Tanzanian police force. We had a few security issues earlier on, noticing that the meeting was being surveilled. And so a choice had to be made whether we should continue the meeting, considering the circumstances, or whether we should close off the meeting and cancel it. But the community, or the leadership that on the ground, felt that it's important for us to stick to our ground, especially when you know you're not doing anything wrong. And the partners were confident, as we were, that this is a legal consultation, we're not doing anything illegal, there's nothing wrong going on here, it's simply people having conversations between lawyers and clients, and that's it. And so we didn't think there was a need for us to leave at that point, so we stayed. We were arrested on the scene. Some of the members who were arrested were actually not in the meeting room, they were at the restaurant, which was a floor above us. And so police actually was more proactive to go and look for people outside of the meeting room and pick them up. Were put on the back of a pickup truck and driven to the central police station. We were what they call interviewed for hours, We were there from the meeting was raided about midday. We were there at the police station from about 2 to 4 p.m. answering questions really about the meeting. They already had our concept, not an agenda, so they knew what were there to do. They knew this was a legal consultation. And so we spent hours there being interrogated. The foreign lawyers, which were myself and my two colleagues who were South African, were driven to our hotel, had to pick up our passports, and then deposit them with the police. The next day we had to return to police and process bail, even though at this point it was made clear to us that there was no charge and there was no offense, and that we were not being investigated for, so they mentioned that there was an investigation, but they didn't tell us an investigation into what, right? We did the interviews, we left. So we got bail the next day. And then we kept reporting to police until Friday morning. And Friday morning we were informed, this was 20th October, we were informed that our bail had been cancelled because they suspected that we had apparently paid a bribe in order to get bail in the first place, which was of course baseless because we hadn't done anything wrong. So we didn't need to apply for bail and we didn't need to pay a bribe in any case. That's not how we operate anywhere. And so we were detained on Friday and taken into an underground jail cell. From Friday, we were promised that an investigation was still happening, still an investigation into an offense we still didn't know, an unnamed offense. Saturday, the file kept moving from the district officer to the regional officer to the zonal officer and then back down, and they're all looking for what charges to give. So from the district level, they had all made it clear that there's no offense. There's no offense that we found here. And so these people don't have any reason to be here. But the officer in charge was, what was this gentleman's name? Benedict Mambosasa, is a police commissioner of sorts, decided that there must be some case that the police has failed to find, even though the police had conducted themselves quite professionally during this whole time and they had simply done their job. They had not treated us badly. They had acted as well as they could under those circumstances. who were kept in jail from Friday 20th. They kept promising us they would investigate and let us know. We were just in there until Monday, when we were hoping that we would be able to get out or at least be produced in court or something, which did not happen. And it turns out that this whole time, Monday and Tuesday, police was trying to had made applications to get medical tests for us. They wanted to conduct exams on the people that they had arrested.
Okay.
Yes. So during that detention was 6 women. There was 3 myself, a Ugandan, 2 South Africans, and 3 Tanzanian women. And then with the men, there were 5 men who were detained inside. One of our colleagues had lost a family member, so he wasn't detained with us. But the rest were 5 men who were detained in another cell, who were kept together. There were, of course, other detainees in the jail in there. Monday, we didn't come out of the cell. Tuesday, they're still trying to find still trying to apply for exams, and the court denied them 2 times, telling them, no, there's no basis. You have to tell us on what grounds do you need to conduct a medical test, because you have to say what the offense is, right? Because if for instance, if we had been charged with armed robbery, then there's no need for you to conduct a medical exam on me, for instance. So the court asked them, what is the offense that you're charging them with, in order to warrant you getting the medical exams, and they didn't have a response for that, and so the court denied both those responses. That was the magistrate's court. We also had an application for habeas corpus, which we were not able to file, I think, at the time, because our lawyers could not access the judges. I believe the higher courts were noticed at the time. And so we're detained there for 7 days. You don't know what's happening. You're aware that, of course, your lawyers are working to get you out, but you're also aware that the police says they're trying to look for more information, but more information into what they still haven't said. So the biggest frustration for me, at least, I believe also for the group, was in not knowing why am I here. I think that's a fundamental question. If you're going to take away someone's freedom, they must know why you're doing it. Why am I here? What have I done to deserve to be here? What offense have you charged me with? What crime have I committed? And the police had no answers for those questions, even though individually the officers there behaved quite humanely and in a civil manner. But being there for 7 days and not being able to talk to people and know what's happening around you, a lot of people are not able to do the work that they ordinarily do. Some of our fellow detainees have young children that they were not able to see for 7 days. So it was tough in a way, but also interesting, because for the most part, I think we were also able. So in terms of our experience, the police acted the best way that they could. They were humane, they were civil, they were understanding that, of course, these people should not be here. It's unfortunate that they are, but they were kind in that way. Of course, jail is jail, right? If you're living in a jail where you're not wearing any shoes, you're sleeping on hard concrete, not that there's any soft concrete, but there's no mattress, you're not wearing anything warm, you have no blanket. There were lots of mosquitoes in there. The jail doesn't have a running tap, so there's no running actual water there which you can rely on. So in terms of sanitation, of course, it's not a healthy environment. We had colleagues there. The colleagues from the local host organization, CHESA, were very, very kind and very generous. They came every day. They brought us breakfast, they brought us lunch, they brought us dinner. We had our food kidnapped by a police officer on one of those days where he just decided that we're not going to eat on that day. But for the most part, there were people who showed up every day to bring food, and when you asked for extra clothes, they brought a change of clothes, which was good. That was helpful. But for the most part, I think what we as institutionally, what we thought was important for us was the fact that we were able to expose, or that right now the world knows what the Tanzanian criminal justice system looks like. People are now aware of the excesses of abuse of power that are happening in Tanzania. People are also aware of the impunity that goes on in that country. And so we are happy for the people who live there that their voices can now be supported and that the world will listen, because they know that these are the things that happen, that go on in that country. Yeah.
Is this what is causing this suppression of the sexual marriages? Is it the government? Is it the current regime? Maybe for him, the president is like maybe against anything like to do with pro-LGBT advocacy. Why? What could be this?
I think this is a case of what you would call having a benevolent dictator. And this is basically somebody who says, I'm doing all these bad things to you, but for your own good. And that is basically the classic definition of President Magufuli and his regime. A lot of the people, including Benedict Mambosasa, the gentleman who kidnapped us, a lot of those people are used to operating outside the law. Even with some of the exciting things, I think a lot of people were very excited about the fact that President Magufuli seemed to be making reforms around state accountability and things like that. But you also find that it's basically, he allows instances of state capture to happen. Mm-hmm. He allows somebody, because Benedict Mambosasa, for instance, is a direct appointee of the president, right? So this is a person who receives the president's endorsement or his criticism. But in this case, you can see that one individual was able to capture the institutions of the state, to capture the whole entire police force under one person's arm, to say, I'm not going to let these people go even though there's no charge. It's the same thing that President Magufuli was doing with all his austerity measures, making orders or issuing orders outside of established procedures, outside of government, without consultation, without any legitimacy, really, operating outside of the law. And that's what creates impunity. Sometimes somebody will do it in a situation that will say, oh, maybe he's doing good work. But actually, that is how you know that somebody is not going to respect the law. And that's what they do. They don't respect the law at all. It's a problem with, I think, the current government right now. And they are fortunate to be riding on the wave of development and infrastructure and all those things. Even though, of course, these are all initiatives that started in previous regimes. So they're only now implementing policies or plans that were put up by other regimes. But they're riding on that wave. They have that, they still have that kind of public support. And so that's, I think, the biggest challenge. But also to realize that this is not exactly an LGBT issue. This is an issue on state capture. It's an issue on impunity.
It's general.
It's an issue on shrinking civil society space, right? Because it's not just key populations who are not able to meet. Yeah, it's a lot of other groups, people working around land rights. People are being, there have been assassination attempts on lawyers. There was that threat, I believe people heard about it a few months ago, where the president was talking about banning pregnant girls from schools, yes. Pregnant teenagers. So it's things like that, where you operate outside the law, you don't care, but you're also shrinking space. Opposition groups, I believe, there are lots of groups there which aren't able to meet, outside even just of politics, but there are lots of groups which aren't able to meet physically. So even space alone, space for dialogue, space for conversation, space for critique and criticism is closing down very, very, very fast in Tanzania. I just hope that by us continuously speaking out, people will be able to realize that this is a very big issue, but it also speaks to the issues around the region in terms of shrinking space. It's an issue in Uganda, it's an issue in Kenya. Access to justice is an issue in the region broadly. You heard about the lawyer in Kenya, Willie, who was killed, I believe it was last year. The assassination attempts in Tanzania and the people who were being intimidated and harassed. Even here in Uganda, you've seen lots of lawyers and other people being beaten up, being rounded up, and kept for days in places where we don't know, and people are being tortured. So access to justice, access to legal representation, respect for the rule of law, shrinking civil society space, state capture are all issues in Tanzania, but also they're issues that our continent is currently grappling with.
Okay, finally, I think you have covered most of the things I want to ask. What message could you have for the Tanzanian authorities, maybe to avert such? What could be the message, maybe?
Well, I would encourage Tanzanian authorities, I think, to respect the rule of law. I think we find rules are there for a reason. We find safety and comfort in knowing that we can enforce the law within the parameters in which we are granted that power, right? Power is given to us by the people, and the people exercise that power through their representatives who make laws to protect them, right? So to guard against the excesses, to respect the set procedures that the law sets out in terms of law enforcement, in terms of the human rights, freedoms and liberties that people enjoy, that we can respect those things if we are going to call ourselves any sort of democracy, and if we hope to see any sort of development, we have to have room for dissenting voices to speak respectfully, and whatever it is that people need to do within their spaces. Shrinking space is not going to take criticism and dissent away. It isn't. And so if we can open up the space and have more conversation and dialogue, and I think that would be very helpful. I think that people of Tanzania would be grateful for that, and I also think that the country as a whole would be better for it.
Okay, lastly, I forgot one question. In terms of, in this time when you guys are detained in the cells and everything, did you get any information that maybe there was a collaboration between the governments, foreign government, maybe South African High Commission and the Ugandan government, maybe trying to intervene? Was there anything like that?
Yes, actually the diplomatic efforts during this time were quite remarkable, I must say. The South African officials were very, very responsive from the beginning. The officials from the High Commission, they were aware of our situation from Tuesday when we were taken in for the interviews and questioning. They came by the police station every day after that to follow up, and as soon as they knew that we were detained, they came in every day and had updates, and they issued a note verbal, they issued reports on the situation and updates. They also coordinated and collaborated very well with the Ugandan officials. Ambassador Richard Kabonero himself actually made a trip to the police cell, to the cell to see me, which was very kind and generous of him. And after that, he sent constantly members of his team, various members of the team, who came by and said, we've been asked for an update, we really want to check on you and see what's happening. And so they were very responsive. I think usually, as a Ugandan, we tend to think that our government doesn't care for us, especially when we are out there. But in this case, I would like to say that they did a remarkable job and just being responsive and taking care of us.
Thank you, Suzan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambrose. I appreciate the platform and the work that Kuchu Times is doing. I'm very excited, of course, because I know I'm part of the family, but also as somebody who reads the news and is able to hear our stories being told, I'm grateful for the platform. Thank you so much.
Thank you.